Von Miller, man. Von Miller. If not the number one guy, the Broncos, you think, from the outside looking in, can't afford to lose, at least the number two. What was your gut reaction when you heard the news?
I was literally scrolling through Twitter and I stumbled upon Rappaport's tweet, and I had to do a triple take that it wasn't some, parody account or satire. I literally couldn't believe it, and I let out a bad word chat I can't repeat on air. I was stunned. I still feel gutted. I legitimately do feel sad and feel so disgusted for Von Miller, the way he worked himself back and he was in peak shape. And even Fangio said he was going to have a hell of a season. And considering where they came from last year with him kind of chiding Von Miller and not having the best relationship to start, for him to say that, it just adds salt in the wound, because we were going to see the old Von this year. We were going to see the MVP type level of performance from Von Miller. And then opposite Bradley Chubb, the big franchise player, the big linchpin of this defense. I mean, it's so demoralizing and deflating, Chad. I feel so badly for Von Miller.
I felt sick, honestly. Yeah. And I think anybody who has any sort of an investment in the Denver Broncos felt similarly yesterday, whether you're coming from the fan arena or from the media landscape. It's just sickening, not only because, you feel for any player who suffers a grievous injury that could cost them the season, but when it is literally one of the premier players in the NFL and how important Von Miller is to the Denver Broncos, obviously it cuts to the core, and you feel for Von, as you said, Zach, you feel for the team. But I know Broncos country is still kind of reeling. And the one thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the crux of today's show is we woke up. Of course, everyone went to sleep last night just with this bitter taste in their mouths. Woke up this morning, though, and there was a silver sliver of a silver lining that came from Dr. David Chow of Outkick, former doctor for the doctor for the San Diego Chargers, a guy that's been in the industry for a long time. He's now in media, as well as I know he still practices. I don't know how much he does with NFL teams, but it was really interesting, Zach, because he came out with a hypothesis that was published on Wednesday morning, and then later there was a tweet that confirmed the very injury, because all we knew when we went to bed last night was basically that it was an ankle. It wasn't the Achilles, but it's a tendon in the ankle. And based on that, of course, we're not doctors. Maybe if you hear that, maybe it becomes patently obvious what the ligament might be, but we're not doctors. But here's what he said. I want to pull this up really quick from Dr. David Chow, who provided some hope, Zach, that Von Miller could possibly still return this year. Now, as we learned from Vic Fangio later on in the day, he's going to IR. They already know that. He's going to go to injured reserve. The question is there a chance that Von Miller could be one of these designations to return later in the season? So let me read to you really quick this piece. And of course, Lance Sanderson had this for us at milehighhuddle.com today. But let me just read, quote, the immediate fear, this is Dr. David Chow, the immediate fear is Achilles tendon rupture, but that does not seem to be the case, fitting with the reports of no tendon tear at all. And given his position and how it occurred, I believe Miller suffered a dislocation injury to his peroneal tendons. This is much better news than if the Achilles were torn. There is precedent for sane season return if this is the case. And we found out later today, it is the case. He did suffer a subluxation/dislocation to his peroneal tendons. And then he goes on to say, all of the reports indicate a tendon injury, but no reference to a tear, which supports my hypothesis. Then he goes on to say, with all this bad news, Zach, I strongly believe there is hope and precedent for a return in the latter half of this season for Miller. When he does, he may not be as effective flipping sides, but depending on which ankle was injured, he should be quite effective rushing on the opposite side of his injury. Fingers crossed that the reports of season ending are premature and all is not lost for Miller in this Broncos campaign, close quote. So, Zach, he went on to list an example of Louis Castile, former Pro Bowl caliber defensive lineman that he treated the same injury, that suffered it, came back later in the season and went on to perform in the playoffs and whatnot. But how much of this, is this the type of thing where you just plan for the worst and hope for the best, or how do you read this?
I mean, I think you're asking the wrong person because I take a realistic point of view with this. The absolute best case scenario, which I think Ian Rappaport tweeted today, was 3 months for Von Miller. He can be back. 3 months would put us in December. So at best case scenario, he would come back as a situational pass rusher. He's not going to come back 100%. He's going to have to work back into that, work back into game shape and conditioning. A situational pass rusher in December, or maybe for the playoff push. I just wonder though, Chad, he's going on 32. He's going to want a new contract soon. Is he going to want to come back and risk tearing his Achilles or hurting that tendon even more, or really risking his long-term health beyond football? I wonder about that. We're not going to get Von back, the normal Von, anytime this season. If he does come back, this is just me being a realist. If he does come back, it will be as a very rotational, situational guy. But like even someone said in the comments, Von Miller on one leg is better than most edge rushers in the NFL. And just having his presence out there would be a big boost for this defense. That's why it's so deflating, not just from a personnel standpoint, from a mental and emotional standpoint. Losing your franchise player days before the season opener, I mean, how do you overcome that? How do you weather that?
I think it can be weathered, and I want to get to that here in a minute. But here's exactly what Ian Rappaport said, which is what confirmed what Dr. Chow, his hypothesis earlier in the day. Quote, this is from Rappaport that Zach just referenced. The specific diagnosis for Broncos star Von Miller is a dislocated peroneal tendon, per me and Mike Garofalo. Essentially, the tendon flipped over the ankle bone. Ouch. Best option is usually surgery with a general recovery time of 5 to 6 months. Absolute best case scenario is 3 months. And Zach, if there's anything that would cause me to doubt that Von could come back, it's that when, he's 31, this is his age 31 season. And anyone who's over the age of 30, you realize pretty quick that the biggest difference, even if you're in really tip-top shape, like Von's a world-class athlete, is that you just don't, when you get sick, you don't bounce back as quick. When you nick something, you just don't heal as fast. Now, this is state-of-the-art. These athletes have access to not only state-of-the-art care, but state-of-the-art technology. And there are all kinds of healing, there are all kinds of options and things that can promote healing and intensify it, which is why I'm going to hold on to it just as a sliver. Best case scenario, 3 months, right? As you said, December. If the Denver Broncos are, put it this way, if Drew Lock is who the Broncos think he is, they're going to be a factor going into December. And if that's the case, and you got a chance to bring Von Miller back, even at 80%, he's good enough to play, that could give a team a boost down the stretch. And, if they're challenging for the playoffs, a push into January football. So that's why for now, I'm maintaining a positive outlook on that. I'll take that as a small sliver, like the movie Silver Linings Playbook. Take that as a silver lining development. Kathy Lund jumping in, one of our superstars. Appreciate the super and the support as always, Kathy. She says, Chad and Zach, please soothe our feelings over this terrible loss. Tell us everything will be okay. We can't lie to you, Kathy. It's a blow, right? But Zach, as I wrote last night in the gut reaction to the Von Miller injury, if Drew Lock, I'll repeat myself, if Drew Lock is who the Broncos think he is and who we think he is, if he's going to really take a step forward, the quarterback, a true franchise guy, is that tide that can raise all ships. So right now, the hope that goes from, defense kind of oriented focus to the offense is just simply going to have to exceed expectations out of the gates, period.
Yeah, to your last point, though, about holding on to that sliver of hope, if it was 3 months and they were making a playoff push, it could be similar to what the Texans have done with J.J. Watt in recent seasons. He hasn't been 100%. He's always injured, and just having him back in that starting lineup on that defense is such a boost for the team. It could be 5 to 6 months, though. That's out of the realm of possibility for this season, and it's looking like, if that's the general time frame, no Von for this year. But the silver lining here, the positive spin, if there is one, this is not a team based around one player. Von is tremendous. He's a Hall of Famer. He's the linchpin to this organization, but they can win without him. They have in the past, and they can again this year. And I am right there with you, Chad. I tweeted this exact same thing last night. It doesn't add more pressure, Von's injury, to Bradley Chubb or the Broncos defense. It puts more pressure on the offense. It's been 5 years now where the defense has carried the offense. 5 years since Peyton Manning's swan song in the Super Bowl. 5 years. It's time for the offense, as young as they are, inexperienced as they are, to pull their equal weight. They lose the luxury now of having those training wheels, being babied along. They have to come out of the gate swinging. They have the talent. They have the weapons. They have the quarterback who they think can succeed, and they have the coaching. It cannot be, let's just survive on offense, let the defense win even without Vaughn. The offense now has to step up, and Locke really does have to grow up, Chad, more than he did 48 hours ago.